Hey guys, in this video we're going to be building the newsletter sign up form page, which is the latest front-end mentor challenge. So if you want to get started with this project, I highly recommend you come here and you click this download button. So when you click on download, this is what you get. You get the starter HTML and a bunch of images. So this is how the challenge is. So we're going to be building this using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I am going to do another video on this where I build this with React. So stay tuned for that. So what we're going to be doing is that when we're going to design this layout, uh, and when they click on this subscribe to monthly newsletter, it takes us to this page. So that is the project in a nutshell. So let's quickly get started. So the way I like starting up with these components, I always like to have a container. So I'm going to divide this into two sections, which are left and right. So on the right, we have our text, which might be a H3 of stay updated. Okay, Control Z. Sorry. We have our text, which is our stay updated, a paragraph, and we're going to copy this paragraph. Okay, and now we're going to have a UL, or you could use an OL, and I'm going to use a UL. These stars is going to be very easy for us to style them using CSS. I might be show you a very hidden property that you don't know about. So we're going to cut this, paste this here, cut this, paste this here. And, this challenge might not be easy, so this video might be up to 30 minutes long or even longer. So this is everything here is inside the right div so far. So what we want to do is I want to have a mini form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and say form. And the reason why we're giving it a form essentially is so that whenever we click enter on the input or click this button, they are all going to trigger the form event. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give it an input type of email. We might change this in the future, and I'm going to explain why later on. So now let's just give this an idea of email. A button colon submit is going to be necessary. I'm going to say subscribe to monthly newsletter. Okay, let's not save because that's going to format it. Okay, so this is going to be the placeholder, sorry, the label. So we're going to say label for email, then we're going to pass in that, which is this stuff right here. And why this is going to be the placeholder, okay, we're going to say placeholder. So let's click on go live so we can see a little bit of what we're building, so we're not just building this abstractly. So this was what we have so far. Pretty nice. We're going to remove the attribution. You can put this if you want to submit your challenge, and submitting your challenges back to Frontend Mentor so you can get community so that you can get the community to review your challenge. And I have a video on how to submit Frontend Mentor challenge, link in the description. So we're going to design the second page, which is the success page, which is this page. This page is pretty easy to do. We can come back to it later. Okay, let's just wrap it in comment, then we'll come back to it later. Okay, we'll come back to it later. Let's just focus solely on styling this. And finally, last but not least, the left. And we're gonna have an image here. I don't think it should be a background image, by the way. So dot slash assets, now it's called assets, and now we have the images illustration desktop, save, and now we have that image. So we're going to put this side by side. So what we want to do now is I want to link this to the CSS file. So link style CSS. So what I want to do now is I want to make our CSS file. Come here, make sure you click outside there, style.css. So the first thing that we need to do is that I think we need to import the font. So we're going to import it by saying font face. And we could call the font family here anything we want. So we could call the font family my font, and we'll set the source. This is how you import a font from locally, not from Google Fonts or whatsoever. When you click on fonts, Roboto, so the name of the font is Roboto. We'll first import Roboto regular and say body font family my font. Okay, so now it has properly put in that font. So there's one last thing that we need to do. It's important to know we note when styling input box sizing border box is very important. Okay, now I think we should be done with the configuration, and let's get on with the actual styling. Instead of calling this container, let's just call this card. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to give the body a display of flex, justify content of center, align items of center, and min height 100 view height. So this is all to just make sure it is properly centered in the dead center of the screen. So the card, which is the entire thing, please do not forget, which has the left and the right div. So we want to give this a display of flex, which puts it side by side. So let's give the card a width of 700 pixels to start. Okay, if we look at this, so things are coming on. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to come here. Just want to just put the design there so that we can properly know what we're building to. So we want to give the body one sort of background color. So let's come to the style guide. Okay. Dark slate gray. Background color, dark slate gray. So the card should have a background of white. Card should have a padding of like, I don't know, 40 pixels. Let's make this 20. I think 40 is too much. So let's address the left and the right div. So the right div, I think the right div should take way more space than the left div. So I'm gonna give this right with 60%. And we need this to be a H1 instead. Yeah, so we need it to take way more space. So left with 40%, and the left image wants to give that one a width of 100%. So essentially, it's going to take 100% of this 40% that this guy is taking right here. So the card, we're going to give this a border radius of 20 pixels, which is pretty nice. So remember, we give this guy a right width 60%, we give the left a width of 40%, and we give the image inside the left a width of 100%. So the image is going to take 100% of the available 40%. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Okay, now so let's start tackling the UL. As you can see, so the UL, I want to give it a list style type image. want to set this to a URL. We're going to go into the assets folder, into the images folder, and I think it's icons. The problem is that this checker is quite big. So let's go to the assets folder where the images is and go to the icon success. Okay. So you can see that there's a width property here. This is like a shortcut to doing. There's a width property here. We can change this to 30 by 30. Save this file, and if we come back here, you can see that it's looking a little bit more smaller, but we still need it to be way more smaller. So let's try making it 20 by 20. 20. Okay, now it looks way more smaller, which is nice. So put it back. Now the li, we want to give them a margin bottom of 10 pixels. Nicely done. So what I want to do is I want to tackle this form. This form isn't looking great at all. If you look at our design, our design is quite common now. So this form isn't looking quite the best. Okay. So what we want to do to this form is make it look a lot like this. Before we continue any further, let's inspect the HTML a little bit. So there's a form property here, and we have label, input, and a button. Every single thing there is an inline element. So the form, we're going to give this a display of flex. Then we're going to give this a justifier, a flex direction of colon. Okay, so what the flex direction of colon is that you gave everything, made everything into take its own row. You made everything to take its own space. So we want to give the form a width property, maybe a width of 400 pixels or 300 pixels. So as for the input, want to give them a padding. So when you're styling an input, it's very important to be very good with the padding because that's the main part of styling an input. So we're going to use 10 pixels, 20 pixels. And the input doesn't have that font. So we're going to say font family inherit. Same thing with the button as well. So we're going to come to the button, font family inherit. And we want to give it a margin top of 20 pixels. Okay, that's going to space it properly. We're going to copy the same padding. The things are looking quite about right. So what we want to do is I want to give the input a border radius of 5 pixels, a outline of none, and a border of none. So border none. And now you're going to say we can't see it, but the border that we want it to have, the color of the border is in the style guide, I think. So I think it's white or gray. So we can look at it here. I think it's gray though. So let's try gray. Say border 1 pixels solid gray. Oh yeah, I think that's the right color. So now for the button. So what we want to do to the button is I want to give it a border. Normally buttons don't usually have borders actually. So we want to remove that. Their border is not necessary. I want to give it a color of white and a background color of that slate gray color. So I think it's charcoal gray. Or rather it's the dark slate gray. It's the dark slate gray. Oh, no, I think it's a charcoal gray. So copy, save, and now I think we have that. But the padding on the button, I think the padding on the button should be more. So let's make this 25 or let's make this 15. And we also need the border radius of 5 pixels as well. That gives it that rounded corners. And we also have to space our input a little bit. So the label needs to have some space, and the label should be smaller. So label, I'm gonna give this a margin bottom 10 pixels. And we want to space this UL part of everything. We want to space everything, give everything some nice proper spacing so it looks more like the close-side design. And this should be way bigger as well. So our H1 font size of 30 pixels, or maybe 30 pixels is a little bit too small. 50 pixels. Okay, we can see that. So what we'll do is I will give the card more padding, and we'll give the card a little bit more width. Okay, so this makes it a little bit more closer to the design. So for the button, let's add a cursor of pointer. So now we have a nice pointer cursor. You might want to go easy on the padding a little bit, so 20 pixels of padding, and we want to take the user to the next screen. So for that, we're going to use some JavaScript. I'm going to call this index.js. So I'm going to select the form. We're going to select the form. So what we're going to say is a form.add event listener. And we want to listen to the submit event, okay? So when that form is submitted, what do we want to do? The first thing I want to do is I want to prevent the default action of it refreshing the page. Okay, that's what we want to prevent. And for us to do that, we have to add this script of index.js. Save. So now we click, it does not refresh anymore, which is quite nice. So what we're going to give this card is a class of hide. Then we're going to say, we're going to toggle that hide class. So hide display none. And now it's gone. So we're going to uncomment this, and we're going to design this. So we're going to say card, save this. So you see, so this is what it says right now. So actually, the way this is ought to be, this ought to be in a H1 that says, thank you for subscribing. If you look at the success image, it should look something like this. Then there's just a simple paragraph. The paragraph is majority of the message. This is going to be very easy to style. Then there's a button. Save. So we're going to give this card dash 2. So what we want in card dash 2, we want to give it a background of white. Save. Let's look at this. And we want to give it a width of 40 pixels, 400 pixels, sorry. It's not very big. Okay, that looks more better now. You might want to give it some padding. And card dash 2 H1 should have a font size of maybe 40 pixels. instead of the big one that we gave it before. Okay, it's starting to look more better. And border radius 5 pixels. Save. So let's look at our actual design, and it had to have this check mark here. So let's put the check mark there. Dot slash assets images icon success. Because we need it to be a little bit of icon card dash 2. So we're gonna come here, say icon card dash 2, and we're gonna give this a width of 50 pixels. I think it's more padding, so let's try giving it more padding. So we're gonna say padding 40 pixels. Oh yeah, the button needs to be longer here, so we're gonna give it a card dash 2 button card dash 2 button. So card dash 2 button with 100%. So now the button looks longer. So it looks okay. But when we click dismiss message, it will now go back to the original one. Okay, so what do we want to do in the JavaScript essentially? So what we want to do is I want to select the card, the first card. So card underscore one, and equal to document dot query selector card just card. I want to say card dot class list dot add height. So by default, it's not going to be hidden. So I want to remove that. This one is going to be hidden by default. Hide. I want to say card dash 2 dot class list dot add hide. Sorry, remove. Because remember, this guy doesn't has it. This guy doesn't has it in the beginning, so we add it to this guy. And this guy that does have it in the beginning, we remove it from him. Just that we haven't defined card 2. Save this. Sorry, if you come here now and we type in your email, whatever it might be. Now we come here, which is pretty nice. Okay, so that's we type in our email. That's pretty nice. So let's try making this responsive now. So this is not going to be very responsive. So if we come here, it's not looking very nicely done. So what we want to do is that when we're below a certain breakpoint, we want to use media queries to change everything. So we're going to say media queries max width 768 pixels. This is just fancy English for when we are below 768 pixels. What we want to do is and let me know if I was a little bit too fast in the video. So card, what I want to do to the card is I want to say flex direction colon. So this is going to make it's instead of it being a row, it's going to change it to be something like this. So if we look at the mobile design, the image is supposed to come first. So we're going to say colon reverse, which swaps it. Now the image is going to come first. I want to give the card a width of 100%. Maybe let's just give it a width of 90%. Save. I'm going to come together. So the text obviously is going to reduce. So card h1. So the h1 inside the card, want to give us a font size of 30 pixels. And normally, what is inside them have width of 60 and 40%, so we want to correct that as well. So remember, we are saying right width 60, left width 40. So remember, this is what we're doing. But what we want to do now is that we want to say 100%, 100%, because that space is now available to them. So that's what we want to do. So good. So what we just need to just adjust is the form. So we just say form with 90%. Because if we come to the form here, let's come to the form, we're giving it a width of 300 pixels. So we're gonna come here, and it's super responsive, and this is super responsive here. This is how it looks on 375. But there's just one last thing to do. Okay, the card, we need to give it this border radius, and so let's try giving this a width of 100% instead and see what happens. So what we want to do is I want to remove the padding as well. So padding 0. So everything is being stretched out. So the body also has some padding. So body padding 0, margin 0. Now it occupies that full width. So if we look at the design again, so I think what is wrong is that we have to change the image. And by the way, I don't quite like this 100% width. Let's make it 95% because it's completely flushed up. So to change the image, you say dot left image filter, and this again is a secret property. This is how you change an image with CSS. You can change the URL to dot slash assets, images, and mobile. Content. I think it's content. Oh yeah, it is content. So let's not take away the padding. Or we can take away the padding, but we need padding on the right div where the text is. Okay, so we're almost like done with this challenge. Okay. Okay, so when we come here, we can type in our email and we see our thank you message. But let's see how our thank you message is supposed to look on a mobile. So it's just supposed to just occupy the full screen. So card dash 2, I'm gonna say min height 100 view heights. Okay, maybe we might be able to dismiss. I'm not sure if we're supposed to be able to dismiss the message. There are hover states, so let's do that. So this is the color. So when we come to the button colon hover, when I give it this background color. So let's come to the desktop one more time. And if we hover, you can see we have that background color. Maybe we might have to just add some effects and just say transition. What transition is just going to make it happen a lot more slower. So all 1 second. And all means all the properties here, which is in this case all the background color. So if there are another property like the color, it would also affect it. So now it takes 1 second to happen.